Welcome to the Whitaker-Myers Question of the Week video. I'm John Mark Young. This week we have a question from Jason in Jacksonville, Florida, and you're going to love his question because it's going to dive into the topic of what's called the 4% rule, which is a key concept in retirement planning established by the financial advisor William Bengen. Now, Jason asked, John Mark, I'm getting ready to retire, and I've heard that the 4% withdrawal rate is considered a safe standard for retirees. Is that really true? What should I be taking out of my retirement? Well, this concept has been a cornerstone of retirement planning, Jason, since it was first introduced by William Bengen in the 1990s. Now, he was a financial advisor, and essentially what he did is he conducted extensive research to determine a sustainable withdrawal rate from your retirement savings, so things like your Roth IRA, your traditional IRA, your 401k, and he aimed to answer a critical question. Really the question that every retiree wants to know. How much can retirees withdraw annually without running out of money if they retired during the worst time in recent U.S. history? Now, you might ask, what was that time? Well, that was the person that retired in 1968 and had to live through a bear market that in reality lasted 14 years, and where we saw as a country, we came to know the term stagflation, high inflation and low economic growth. You can go to our article, Bear Markets Normal Not Fun, to see how long that bear market actually lasted. Now, Bengen's research led to what we now know as the 4% rule. And how he came to that, again, he analyzed historical data, including stock market returns and inflation rates, to find a rate that would preserve a retiree's portfolio over a 30-year retirement period if they retired in the worst time period ever. However, what Bill, during an interview with MarketWatch in 2020, told the author was that he always designed that to be the minimum floor, not the actual floor. The actual average retiree could have taken over their lifetime was closer to 7%, and during times in history, it has been as high as 13%. His calculations are that you invest your dollars into growth in income, and aggressive growth. He did not use international, which has been the bad part of the market over the last 15 years, and he assumed you put half of your money in U.S. Treasuries, which carry zero risk, albeit historically have had very, very low returns. And today, they're carrying interest rates anywhere between 4 and 5%. Now, a famous investment theologian, for lack of a better term, Michael Kitces, has come along and helped to refine Bill Bengen's work by saying, how do you determine, should I be closer to that worst case scenario, 4%? Or should I take a withdrawal that's a little bit higher, maybe going to 7? Again, not that we're advocating that, but that's been the average return a retiree could have taken. He uses data from the Nobel laureate Robert Shiller to determine when the market was cheap and when it was expensive. If expensive, the thought is that market returns are going to be lower over the next 10 to 15 years, and one should be closer to 4%, maybe even lower. And if the market is cheaper, then maybe you are going to have a good run, and you can get closer to that 7% number there. So enough about history, but let's go back to that 4% rule and run some calculations on that. Bengen discovered that by withdrawing 4% of a person's portfolio in the first year of retirement and then continuing to adjust that amount for inflation each subsequent year, retirees could maintain their savings for at least 30 years, even during the worst market downturns, as discussed above, which again was 1968, and that would be your start date for retirement. Now, let's break down an example to help you, Jason, kind of work through that 4% number. So if you have a retirement portfolio of $1 million, to keep the math easy, the 4% rule would suggest withdrawing 40% in the first year. In the following years, you would adjust that amount based on inflation to maintain your purchasing power. You do the same thing that Social Security does. Maybe November, December, you see what inflation is average for the year, what the CPI report says, and you adjust that payment up. If you were closer to the 7% rule, you would take $70,000 in your first year and adjust for inflation. And if you were really wanting to roll the dice and pray you get closer to the best case scenario ever, not something we would advocate, you could pull out 130% a year for that. Now, Bengen's research took into account the worst economic scenarios, including the Great Depression and multiple bear markets. Again, go read our article, Bear Markets Normal Not Fun. The part where we say normal is to say they happen a lot there. But his 4% rule proved resilient even in those challenging times. A crucial part of Bengen's findings is the importance of a diversified portfolio, though. When you get into decumulation, you need to have a mix of stocks, bonds, real estate, non-correlated assets. The balance helps manage risk and ensures more stable return over time. We always quote Ecclesiastes 11:2. We call it our Ecclesiastes 11:2 rule. Divide your portion to 7, yes, even to 8, for you know not what calamity may come upon the earth. We even recommend our clients have a sleeve of 10% of their portfolio in retirement in private real estate, because these have higher return potentials than bonds and historically, and expected lower volatility there. A common diversified portfolio at Whitaker-Myers might consist of, for a retiree, 50% stocks broken into the 4 categories of growth and income, aggressive growth international, 40% in more safer bond assets like U.S. Treasuries, and 10% in private real estate investments. This mix has historically provided growth while minimizing risk to the investor there. So remember the things that Bengen really looked at with his research. Extensive historical data. He was an engineer by trade, so he looked at a lot of data. The stock and bond market performance of the past, which is not guaranteed in the future. Inflation adjustments, which again have been high recently. Having a diversified portfolio. All things that Bengen said were important. While the 4% rule is a useful guideline, it's essential to remember that everyone's financial situation is unique. So factors like changes in your lifestyle, unexpected expenses that may come up that you think you may need to pull out of retirement, and varying market conditions can impact this retirement strategy of taking 4% out. To give a real life example of this, Bill Bengen himself, who sold his financial planning practice and moved to Arizona, was asked what kind of withdrawal rate he is actually taking in his portfolio today. And he said back in 2020, he is taking a 5% withdrawal rate on his portfolio there. Now, you consulting with a financial advisor, Jason, can help tailor the best approach for your needs and is the most appropriate thing for most families to pursue, and one reason why we spend so much of our time educating our clients and advisors on retirement planning concepts. Now, again, Jason, I want to be clear about this. The 4% rule has become the standard because that was the amount that never ran out, even in the worst case scenarios. The average was around 7, but I don't know any financial advisors. As a matter of fact, when Dave Ramsey mentioned something higher than 4 on his show a few months ago, he was crucified across the financial planning community for saying that there, because everyone is so stuck to the 4% rule. Why? Well, if you do take out 7, there have been times where you would have ran out of money, and sometimes ran out of money really, really quick. Of course, the calculations that I saw when Dave did his podcast were people running calculations of the worst case scenarios, retiring in 2000, 2001 into the tech bubble in 2008. Those are possible and probable, or something that could happen. I wouldn't say probable, but those are things that could happen. So the main thing with your withdrawal rate, if you're going to go anything higher than what Bill Bengen calls his safe max, the absolute minimum he would take out, and again, he's taking out more than that safe max, more than the 4%. The thing I would tell you is you have to be flexible. If you're going to pull something out more than 4%, if you're going to go into the 5s, the 6s, the 7s, again, not something that we advocate on a blast, but we would say is very customized to the person, you have to be ready to make pivots based on what the market gives you, because that's the major unknown in your retirement, is what kind of rates of return are you going to get? You just don't know that. You might fix in something for a while, but at some point that's going to come due and you're going to have to relock it in. So ultimately, it's a very customized situation, but the 4% rule has been the minimum, Jason. That's why you hear a lot about that. Again, it's what Bill Bengen called his safe max. It has become the standard in the financial planning community. It's one that we typically start at with clients and then adjust from there based on their spending needs. And those spending needs are dependent on your lifestyle. And that's really a number that you have to get clear on when you get close to retirement, is what does my lifestyle need to look like? So thanks so much, Jason, for asking that question. It's a great question. It's one we get asked all the time. If you have a question you would like to send in to Whitaker-Myers, you can go to the comment section of this video, the description section, and there is an email address that'll send right to our general queue. You can ask a question, and we will try to answer that on one of the upcoming video series. And if you'd like to meet with any of our financial advisors and coaches, you can go to the comment section of this video, where you can click a link to schedule a meeting with any coach who will help you in baby steps 1, 2, and 3, and any financial advisor who will help you in baby steps 4, 5, 6. so you can eventually get to 7 where you can live and give like no one else. And don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. Thanks so much. We'll look forward to seeing you next week.